I want to go over the Unit 6 essay and give you some tips on how to do well on it. Now, this essay is like all the others in the sense that you have to follow the instructions to a T. In other words, precisely. You don't have to do anything that you're not asked to do, so don't put extra work on yourself. But you do have to be mindful of what you are required to do, and any of those things that you don't do will affect your grade. So for this essay, you will need to read two documents, the Kentucky Resolutions and the South Carolina Exposition and Protest. Now, one of the things you're going to be asked to do in this assignment is to make clear that you understand the significance of the context of these two documents, particularly the time period in which they are written. This is a history course, so you're supposed to be able to show that you understand the history that each document reflects, and they were written at very different times, and the concerns of Americans during those two time periods were very different. So, in your essay, you should write an introduction outlining the basic argument of state powers versus national powers. Now, that means the argument of these two documents. You may want to turn to the Constitution itself to find material. Now, in some ways, these two documents agree with one another. That is, the people who wrote them wrote the same kind of argument in each. But in some ways, they're very different, and you need to try to explain what those ways are. Write a brief summary of why each document was written. This is critical, because this is where we get into the differences in the time period of the two documents. The documents were written for very different reasons. What is the historical context? Again, you will probably want to write a paragraph for each document. Each paragraph needs to be 6 to 8 sentences. They need to be complete, they need to be clear, and as specific as they can be. So, what was the driving force behind each of these documents? Why were they written? And who wrote them? Write a paragraph of what the two documents have in common. As I said, there are certain things in common, and they stand out very clearly, but what doesn't stand out so clearly, perhaps, is the reasons why they were written. And that's where you have to read your textbook and understand the two different time periods. This essay assignment is being provided to you in Unit 6, which is when the South Carolina Exposition and Protest was written. We've already covered the unit that surrounds this one, the Virginia and Kentucky Resolutions. So you need to show that you're aware of what you learned from a prior unit, in this case, and from Unit 6, in this case. That will tell you what are the differences as well as the similarities between the two documents. So you write a paragraph of what the difference is between the two documents. Well, obviously they are written by different people with different motives. That might not be so obvious, but I'm giving you a hint here. They were written by two different men with different motives, and the motives were different because they were driven by different concerns in different time periods. Write a conclusion that answers whether or not a state should have the ability to nullify a national law, and if so, under what circumstances. And if not, why not? This last paragraph will be your opinion, but remember, do not use I in any form. State your opinion as if it were fact. Now, you might think, well, since this is my opinion, I can't do anything wrong with this paragraph. Well, certainly your opinion itself cannot be wrong, but what can be wrong is excessive vagueness as to the reason why you think so. Really, you have a responsibility to make sure that you have historical reasons, that is, reasons grounded in the history you're writing about, You need to show that you've learned something from that history. So if you say something like, well, a state should have the ability to nullify a national law because I hate the federal government. It messes with my life all the time. That's a concern from the present. And even though that's a legitimate concern, if that's what you have to remember that this is a history essay, and every paragraph should reflect something you've learned about the past. So don't forget that when you write this paragraph that answers item 5. And then, of course, it tells you that you're not to use Wikipedia as a source, and you really should only use the sources that are provided in this course. That's the textbook, and that's these 2 articles up here. We don't want you to forget what you're supposed to do and the documents you're supposed to analyze. So, for example, if you found out a lot about John Calhoun, that's nice, but if you forgot that you were also supposed to talk about the Kentucky resolutions, you would get a bad grade, even though you spent a lot of time writing about John Calhoun. You can find enough information about John Calhoun from the textbook when it talks about this document, the South Carolina Exposition and Protest. Whoops, I just told you who wrote the South Carolina Exposition and Protest. Well, that's not a very huge hint, because by reading it you'll know that automatically. But it's important because you have to understand what John Calhoun represented and what his beef was and what his motives were to write that document. All right, essays should be typed in 12-point font, Times New Roman or Arial. Use 1-inch margin on all sides, and your essay should be around 1,000 words. So this is really helpful information for you. If you do these things, you should get a good grade. Make sure you follow the instructions. That's not too much to ask, and in fact, this is kind of like a map towards how to get an A. And so you should look at these instructions as a gold mine in terms of your grade. And it says you should submit documents as JPEG, PDF, etc. Well, don't submit your document as a JPEG. I don't know why they said that, because I don't want a picture where I can't read the document. So submit it as either a PDF, a rich text file, which you can do without any software. It's automatically on any computer, or a doc file. Now, if you're using a Mac, you can also submit it in Apple Pages format. So that's an option too. So that's it for the Unit 6 essay, and I hope this helps you with your preparation for that. Good luck!